We'd arrived in Venezuela as Hugo Chavez faced a referendum on whether his presidency should end. To the Bush administration, he's a dangerous communist in America's backyard, and they want him out. But to his supporters, he's someone who's finally standing up to US power in the region.
From here it looks like a revolution, and that's how President Chavez sees himself, as a revolutionary rather than a politician.
2 years ago, rival politicians staged a coup that overthrew the democratically elected Chavez. The United States quickly recognized the coup leaders as the new government, but a popular uprising swept Chavez back to power. Now, the man they call El Comandante was fighting for survival again to ensure it wasn't Washington's vision for Latin America that triumphed, but his. Venezuela sells as much oil to the US as Saudi Arabia. You'd never know it. Most of its people live in poverty. In the capital, Caracas, the poor live on the edge of the city, in the neighborhoods they call the barrios. Our driver, Jesus, took us to his. He said we'd meet someone who'd explain why the poor love Chavez and the US government hates him. He took us to the local doctor's surgery. Nothing remarkable here, you might think. But Dr. Isol Capote is Cuban. Chavez sends cheap oil to his friend Fidel Castro. Castro sends doctors who provide free medical care. The deal has enraged the Bush administration, who want to overthrow Castro. But the barrios love it. Few Venezuelan doctors choose to work here.
Hay bastante violencia. Incluso en un año que llevamos aquí han muerto en nuestro barrio 4 muchachos por arma.
She said it's no secret that the barrios are dangerous. It is a violent place, she said, because of lack of education. There are drugs, some people carry arms. And since she's been here in this year, 4 young men have been killed through shootings. Chavez has brought thousands of Cuban doctors to work in the very poorest neighborhoods of Caracas and elsewhere in the country. As far as critics are concerned, this shows that he's well on the way to turning Venezuela into a communist country like Cuba. But for the people who live in these poor neighborhoods, they say it's the first time they've had regular access to free medical care. We went to the one-bedroom flat Jesus rents for his wife and 3 children. Under a new government scheme, Chavez is pumping money into education for the poor. Jesus' wife, Clara, is hoping to go to Cuba to train as a teacher. Jesus says that this is one of the benefits from the Chavez government, that all of the poor received a box of these books. It's a little library for families. They're all free. Under another Chavez scheme, Jesus will soon get a cheap loan to buy a house. And there are other benefits.
Anteriormente, ellos le hacían daño a alguien y sacaban su dinero y ¡pum! Y pagaban a los jueces, abogados, el amiguismo, y eso quedaba así.
He said before Chavez was elected, under the old governments, the poor were repressed. There were disappearances. Anybody who was rich could bribe their way out of trouble. Now, he said, there's justice for everybody and people are more equal in Venezuela. Thanks to this year's high oil prices, Chavez can shower the poor with cash. It's no wonder he's portrayed as a second messiah, even if his enemies say he's cynically buying votes and fomenting class hatred. Now Chavez rivals had forced a referendum vote aimed at ending his term as president. In the centre of Caracas, thousands of Chavez supporters rallied behind their hero. His detractors say he's building a personality cult that will end in dictatorship.
He's coming at some stage tonight. All his most loyal fans have been waiting for him for hours and hours, all day long.
Eventually, El Comandante arrived. He wasn't always a Democrat. In 1992, he was jailed after launching his own coup attempt.
Señor Presidente, Capote. Sandra Hornan. Mucho gusto.
In the 80s and 90s, Venezuelan governments followed the advice of Washington. State monopolies were privatized, and the free market plunged millions of Venezuelans into poverty. The song was self-congratulatory, a hymn of praise to Chavez and his policies. Chavez has tapped into the popular distrust of the United States and its economic ideology.
A la pesadilla del capitalismo mundial, a la pesadilla del neoliberalismo.
Just because Venezuela was in the US's backyard, he said, they didn't have to take orders from America. The world's fifth biggest exporter of oil could go its own way.
Chavez said tonight that voting no not just keeps him in power, but also is a vote against capitalism, imperialism, and stopping Venezuela from becoming a colony of the United States.
As he left, he agreed to give us an interview after the referendum. Sick of the corruption and ineptitude of past governments, many wealthy Venezuelans had voted for Chavez in '98. But since, most have become alienated by his divisive rhetoric, and in Washington they found plenty of powerful people willing to listen to their concerns.
You have lovely painting.
Talk to a Chavez supporter and you won't hear any criticism of his style, but a lot about how the US has fueled the opposition for their own ends. Andres Decheney is a banker and journalist, and now an oddity in Venezuela, a rich Chavez supporter.
Small, would say more intimate living room, and then as you walk down this step, you get into our, what we call our garden and bar area. I love America. I was educated in America. I have properties in America. I have bank accounts in America. I don't have to, everybody knows that. But believe me, with all respect to Mr. George Bush, whose father I know very well, George Bush's father. What did he try to do? Let's get rid of Chavez somehow, and I will have the Venezuelan oil with me. What did these people do when they overthrew Chavez for just 32 hours? The first thing they did was, we are going to privatize again our oil industry. Why? Because they wanted the Americans to be owners of the oil in Venezuela again.
Campaigning, and we've come to an opposition rally, their final one. They say it's going to be the mother of all marches. They're singing "Se va, Chavez will go, he'll go." This is in a very well-off area. Most of the opposition are from the middle and upper classes. This is the yes camp. These people are going to vote yes in the referendum that Chavez's mandate should be revoked.
Chavez claims that he is for the people. Therefore, if you don't agree with him, you're an enemy of the people. Why? Why can't I just disagree with him but still be a Venezuelan like anybody else? Is that split which has angered people? And now you see the reaction.
Not us, because we signed against him. So he doesn't pay attention to our...
He penalizes the middle class.
He penalizes everybody that time.
It's a sign of how deeply Chavez has polarized this country that 14 opposition groups, helped by businesses and trade associations, had united for the referendum to vote him out of power. Many of the people here detest his anti-Americanism. The oil industry means that some Venezuelans have close links with American companies. The opposition is deeply fragmented. There's no clear leader. But speaker after speaker hammered home their message. Chavez wasn't interested in helping the poor, just in buying their votes. A military helicopter, symbolic of the government, provoked jeers. Chavez's friendship with Castro helps convince these people that he wants to turn their country into a communist dictatorship like Cuba. Many middle-class Venezuelans are already sending their money abroad.
Everyone we've spoken to is absolutely convinced that on Sunday the opposition will get rid of Hugo Chavez.
The group that gathered the 3.4 million signatures that triggered the referendum is called Sumate. At their heavily guarded headquarters, I met Maria Corina Machado, one of the founders of Sumate. She's a heroine for the opposition.
Well, okay, what we're going to see here is this one, a SIG center that reports when there's something that is irregular going on. Like, for instance, either there's violence or a member of the military stopping people from voting, something that...
She said Sumate was independent, though she was a frequent speaker at opposition rallies. And during the coup, Machado was present at the swearing-in of the illegal president, a family friend.
And we can, kind of filter.
The Chavez camp have tried to discredit her and her organization because they take money from the US government. Tell me, Maria, one thing that's been controversial is funding from the US. How much money have you received from US organizations?
Well, we've received so far $30,000 that it's been invested strictly in training programs that have nothing to do with the referendum. It's just, teaching.
The US says money given to Sumate and other groups was to strengthen democracy.
There's nothing in the Venezuelan laws that prohibits us from receiving funding from abroad. It's totally legal, permitted. But the president, on last February, through one of his programs on TV, Aló Presidente, instructed the national prosecutor to investigate us, and he said that we should be charged with treason. He has said that we represent the interest of a foreign country, in this case the United States, and that what we're trying to do is to overthrow him. And well, what we try to say is that we defend the rights of every citizen, even those that support him.
In the early hours, thousands of voters began to queue for what would be Venezuela's biggest election turnout ever. Many had become eligible to vote for the first time because of a government registration drive.
At the end of the campaign, Chavez made a call for all of his voters to come out at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's 5:30 now, and here we are. The streets are full already.
In the barrios, they were singing Chavez Won't Go.
Voting is starting. Some of these people have been waiting all night. Finally, they're going to get to go in.
Que no pueden ver la pantalla cuando la persona esté votando.
No, por supuesto. Gracias. We're allowed in as long as we don't look at the screens when people are voting.
Electronic voting machines were being used for the first time.
These are the famous voting machines that have caused so much controversy here. They're made by a US company. They're going to be used in the American elections later on this year. And both sides have expressed concerns that these machines could be used to commit electoral fraud.
There was a sense of high stakes. The Chavez supporters saw the vote as a chance to fight American imperialism. The opposition saw the referendum as an opportunity to stand up for US-style capitalism.
Muy importante de todas las personas que han colaborado aquí, un orden muy bueno y ha sido bastante ordenado.
He said that it's much busier than it's ever been before. This is the biggest turnout they've ever seen, that the queue was going back 4 blocks. completely full of people earlier this morning.
A few hundred voters complained that their names weren't on the register, but otherwise the day went smoothly. Fears of confrontation between opposition and government sides didn't materialize. They were too busy voting.
It's 5 o'clock in the evening and there are still huge queues outside the polling stations.
Sumate representatives took exit polls. By law, the results could not be announced until voting ended. But the results were leaked. Foreign journalists were told Chavez was losing. I went to RCTV, one of 5 privately owned TV channels bitterly opposed to Chavez rule. Its walls had recently been daubed with graffiti from El Comandante's supporters. Now the station was heavily guarded against attacks in case Chavez lost. Marcel Granier, president of the station, had supported the failed coup to oust Chavez. Now he was in a confident mood.
Well, we've come here to ask you if you can shed any light on what's happening at the moment, because there's a lot of confusion.
Our exit polls tell us that the difference is close to 20 points in favor of the yes. We are about to decide whether we are a democratic country or whether we are a colony of Fidel Castro or Hugo Chavez.
We waited for the official verdict. When it came, the opposition pollsters had got it badly wrong. It was just after 4 a.m. Chavez had won a clear victory, and international observers, led by former US President Jimmy Carter, said there was no evidence of ballot rigging. Chavez appeared at the presidential palace. The Venezuelan people have spoken, he said, and the people's voice is the voice of God.
¡Viva Venezuela! ¡Viva Zamora! ¡Viva Florentino! ¡Ale
Only after the vote were new documents released showing the true extent of US funding of politics in Venezuela.
The U.S. government runs OPIC.
Ava Gollinger is an American Venezuelan lawyer.
They're all written exactly the same way. I've received now more than 2,500 pages of documents from 2 different agencies. One is the National Endowment for Democracy. The other is USAID, AID, Agency for International Development.
Using the Freedom of Information Act, Gollinger discovered the US government had given $12 million, mainly to kickstart groups like Sumate, who had pressed for the referendum on Chavez's presidency.
It's clear that there's a direct line from US State Department to the 2 subcontractors to the various organizations receiving financing, of which Sumate is one of them. These are not efforts that are funding reconciliation or stability or any type of mediation even between a polarized nation. These are efforts that are funding one side, supporting it, sustaining it, in order for them to continue in their efforts to destabilize and to overthrow a government.
When the American government accepted the referendum result, some Venezuelans felt abandoned.
We've run into a protest in the road, so we're going to go over to see what it's about. People are shouting fraud.
Some protesters made false accusations about international monitors led by Cesar Gaviria and Jimmy Carter that they conspired with Chavez to rig the ballot.
They're selling us for oil. That's all.
Yeah, that's all. That
Gaviria
is
and Qatar, they're just selling us for oil.
Yeah. What are
I'm
you
sure
prepared
it
to
is.
do? How far are you
I'm prepared to
go?
do anything to fight for my democracy.
At this very minute, there are 4 people dead out there. You want action? Go up there.
They told me that Chavez supporters had just opened fire on opposition protesters. Four people, including an opposition leader, had been shot. One of them, a 61-year-old woman, would later die. We went to the hospital. The gunmen were quickly arrested, but it was clear the referendum hadn't eased the divisions that crippled this country. The opposition politician Ernesto Alvarenga was taken for surgery. More evidence, said his supporters, that Venezuela was heading for dictatorship. In the presidential palace, Chavez was getting back to the business of his revolution. He'd agreed to give us a rare interview. He believes the referendum marks a change in the relationship between the US and the whole of Latin America.
No podemos aceptar la fatalidad de ser el patio trasero de los Estados Unidos.
We can't accept that we're just the United States' backyard, he said. Here in Latin America, we can't continue to be colonies of the United States, countries dependent on Washington or the IMF. We have to be free. Our vision of economy, he went on, is of a caring economy, an economy where the state has to be the fundamental engine, not the market. And he made it clear, whatever President Bush might hope, he wasn't going to give up his friendship with Fidel Castro either. My relationship with Fidel Castro, he said, is a relationship of infinite affection and infinite respect. It's not true that we are both the same, or that I have modelled myself on Fidel.
No, Fidel es Fidel y Hugo es Hugo. Ahora,
Fidel is Fidel, and Hugo is Hugo. But we have a profound coincidence in our view of the world.
En la visión que tenemos del mundo.
The Bush administration would still like to see Chavez gone. But for the moment, with instability in the Middle East, America doesn't want further turmoil in a major oil supplier like Venezuela. This time, Chavez's popularity and the fact this is a democracy have saved him. For all America's power, there are limits to that power, even in its backyard.